Hi friends, host Eric here, and I'd like to answer the question of the comment of Sylvie Goncalves, who says, I'm starting to feel like being an ENFP is a curse. I'm only good at motivating others and not myself. I love being an ENFP, but what is its purpose? So I wanted to respond to that question because it's significant, I think, that as a representative or a manifestation of a given type, which is to say a given configuration of cognitive functions, that we do our best to try to recognize those aspects of that configuration that provide us ontological wholeness, which is to say that allow us to feel as though we're pleased with who we are and how we experience our lives, that we're pleased with our growth as an individual, that we know what makes us happy in some sense, that we're able to attain that, and to feel as though we are doing purposeful things. So, I guess that's probably the first matter to consider when addressing this issue of what's the purpose of an ENFP is how do you measure that? Hi. Good, how are you? She's go ahead and go on in. She's in there. The purpose of an individual then is going to be determined on two levels. On one hand, a given configuration does lend itself to certain kinds of manifestations of self. In other words, certain kinds of interactions with the world, and other configurations lend themselves to other kinds of interactions with the world. So what I say about an ENFP is, like an ENTP, they interact with the world first with ideation. That is to say, they come up with metaphysical action. They're metaphysical actors first and foremost. They like to work with meanings as a means of dealing with the world, which means also that they like to talk with people, like the ENTP. Somebody who has SE is less inclined towards talking by a substantial margin because they take physical action, not metaphysical action. So, ENFP, as an extroverted intuitor, is going to want to interact with other people a lot. This is backed up by the fact that their tool function is FI, introverted feeling. They know what they value, and they know how relationships develop over time. The problem is, FI is very unreliable in its metaphysical aspect. When I say metaphysical aspect, I mean in how it manifests across time. So, right now, we're all existing in the moment as we're existing. And we have the environment around us, that's our sensory environment. And we have the environment that's going on in our head, that's our metaphysical environment. And the environment that's going on in your head right now, to the extent that you're still paying attention to me, is one created by the words that I'm saying. You're listening to what I'm saying and thinking about those things and hearing me and trying to understand what I mean, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when you're engaged in that space mentally, you're not physically present in the sensory space. I mean, you're not mentally present in the sensory space. You're still physically present in the sensory space, obviously. But your ontology is working out in the abstract realm at that moment. It's not working out in the concrete realm. So the objects that you're used to working with are objects that are subject to conditionality then. Namely, they are time objects or sets of words that are rendered related tags to approximate the things that you experience in life. You work with those things first and foremost. But Unlike the ENTP, who is endowed with TI, the conditionality function, or the objective internal metric, your judging function's not naturally suited to work with extroverted intuition. Introverted feeling is the most experiential of all the functions and the least metaphysical of the functions, and it's how you an NEFI is really your dominant function in some sense, because we manifest ourselves through the combination of our first and second functions as a default. Most of the time, I will be operating through NE and TI. The FE thing, FETI is itself its own unseparable pair. So it's basically like I go any very little SI, TI, littler FE, and it for you any FI, TE, SI. You're basically an NEFI with an FITE and an NESI, or an SINE. So it goes, each of these things work in pairs in that fashion. As a consequence, you are going to interface with the world through your third function, or TE. It's like I interface with the world through my third function, FE. And as a consequence, while your feelings are not reliable in terms of being a guide for what one ought to do over time, the good news is your overarching hidden agenda function, your goal, your main goal in life, is a TE framing. You want to be able to point to attainment of goals as milestones of self-development progress, which means if you want to understand what your purpose is as an ENFP, you need to have specific goals and haphazardly work your way toward them, like the ENTP does. You're not going to have a very straight course in that regard, because you like to be able to improvise in the moment. So as a real-time reality, you want to be able to be improvisational. As a long-term hidden agenda, you'd like to attain goals. And those two things don't necessarily coordinate with each other very well. The improvisational nature of the ENFP works through feelings and the development of relationships over time. So your goals need to be coordinated with the development of your relationships over time. For example, Sylvie Goncalves, if you have if you're in a relationship with a male, let's say, or another female, I don't know what your orientation is, but if you have a boyfriend, for example, then how that boyfriend relates to you is going to tell you a great deal about whether or not you are in the right relationship. So it's like the right relationship will make you understand your own purpose more clearly. And the reason for that is, like the ENTP, you need an SI providing significant other that that calms you down, basically. An SI providing significant other will compel you without any sort of force at all, but which will allow and make available to you a kind of processing of time that will render you grounded in the self, in self-knowledge and the body and stuff like that. So if you're with an SI Dom, if you're with, for example, an ISTJ is what you'd need. An ISTJ will make you start to think of the day as more of a unit, and that your procession through the day is related more heavily to the sensory environment and your own body. So, for example, you'll know you're going to get hungry at certain times. You'll start to realize that you can kind of schedule metaphysically around these things, like when you're going to eat and when you're going to blah, blah, blah. And it just kind of falls into place. You start to get you start to get it. Like, okay, I need to get up in the morning, I need to go to bed at night, and in between I need to do these various things, and then there's like little bursts of activity in between, and you get to feel for the rhythms of shit that we do not naturally have. ENFP and ENTP are rhythmically challenged, life rhythmically challenged in that regard, because we are so distant from our own bodies and we seek somebody else to provide that for us. If you're with an ISTJ, your purpose will become clear, because as a TE tool user, that is to say, he's a TE as a second function, he's going to be like, well, I operate by doing goal shit. But his hidden agenda, FI, is going to be like, but what I really want is to develop relationships over time. So he'll look to you and say, well, what are your feelings? Since you're stronger in the feelings department, what are your feelings valuing more highly and less highly? He'll understand how to convert that better, more effectively into goals than you do, because you have it in the third slot. He'll turn that into goals and try to make that shit happen. And unlike you, he's got ignoring SE, which means he'll do what's in front of him through a TE framework, which is a much more effective in some sense, or realistic, time realistic manifestation of an SI dom than the ISFJ, who's very time unrealistic. So that's this old guy driving down the street in a truck blasting his music. Anyway, yeah, you need to get your dual. That's ISTJ, and he'll provide you with the SI grounding in time. That is to say, even though the SI is time unrealistic, it's what I mean by that is SI gauges time on how the self feels, not on the outside world. It's totally subjective, whereas NI time is much more objective. So, he'll ground you in that subjective understanding of time as a biorhythms thing. And then he'll frame your own weak but improving goal self, which is TE, and order operations steps, how to do shit self, TE. He'll make that stronger. Meanwhile, in return, you'll provide FI as a tool function, which will serve his third slot agenda of having a relationship that develops and grows over time. And the NE you bring will help make him happy as well. So my answer to purpose is the answer to most things I say, which is duality will help you realize what that purpose is. It's going to end up being a purpose that's particular to specific relationships in your life. It's not probably going to be a grander purpose, because you use FI, which is a relationship tool. One other thing I wanted to say, what was it? Let me look at that comment again. I'm only good at motivating others and not myself. Well, you can't really motivate yourself. That's the problem. It's not really possible to motivate yourself, because we're extroverted intuitors. We take metaphysical action, and we need externalities to motivate us. I can be motivated by structure that I don't like necessarily, but still be successfully motivated by it. I could be motivated by something really interesting or some process. I mean, it's like motivation comes on its own intermittently. But yeah, we're mostly motivated by externalities. And for me, it's like affirmation and stuff. For you, I guess it would be seeing your goals made real in the world. Here's a goal for you. Find an ISTJ man. Lock that shit down. And don't be ENFP squirrely about it. Make sure you express that you are solid. You're not going anywhere. Shit like that, you know? Because just because your feelings change in the moment, keep your head about you. Remember the big picture. Use your feelings in their metaphysical aspect to the best of your ability. That means be aware of the fact that if you want to attain all the good outcomes of an extended relationship that's grown and developed over time and become deeper and richer and stuff, that you've got to stay with somebody for a long time. So find that dude, find your ISTJ, make sure you get yourself an ISTJ, don't settle for less, and marry his ass, and know your purpose, and be happy for the rest of your life. The end. Thanks for watching Talking with Fan People, and thanks for the question, Sylvie Goncalves. And I hope ENFPs everywhere enjoyed this video.